welcome to My Security TV and our Tech and Sec Weekly. My name's Chris Cubbage. I'm the Executive Editor with My Security Media. And today we're joined again by George Moawad, the ANZ Country Manager with Genetec. And we're going to be looking at critical infrastructure and the changes for 2021 that we've seen so far. George, thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, Chris.
Great. We last spoke in January 2021 for an ANZ sort of country update and a market update as well. And we have seen a sort of a rise in discussions on critical infrastructure protection and particularly around physical and cyber security. This particular session, and I like the title we've got here, is Let's Get Critical, the new security imperative for Australian critical infrastructure. And I think since the market update, and we obviously have that link in the show notes, what's been your observations for the year? And then obviously the discussions that you're having with clients on critical infrastructure, and yeah, how's the year panned out? I suppose let's start with that.
Well, we know that cybersecurity is a growing concern in the industry. That, obviously critical infrastructure is a big thing because things are getting more and more digitized, Chris, and introduces new types of threats, not a physical threat, but like things like malware, hacking, espionage, data theft. These are the things that are coming into play now, and critical infrastructure are well aware of and trying to, combat on a daily basis. So this is the other thing as well. Government is also involved in this, and there's some added pressure for the end users with regulations to comply to the new Cybersecurity Act. So sometimes it's easy to put a system in place to be able to combat these cybersecurity threats. But what makes it more, critical is to make sure that it's compliant with the new rules that the government putting in place. And this is a moving target. The regulations used to be, once every 10 years. Now it's like we're getting amendments, monthly on every 6 months, and it's constantly a moving target. So there's the new, of course, in Australia, there's the amendment for the Critical Infrastructure Act, which should be available next year now, early next year. They've added 11 industry sectors to that mix. So you've got the likes of communications, financial services and markets, data storage and processing, the defence industry, higher education and research, energy, food and grocery, healthcare, medical, space technology, transport, and water and sewage.
Yeah, so they're all covered under that. I suppose from Genetec's perspective, you're in the security and surveillance sector, so you touch on all of those. Is there any that coming out early from your discussions with clients and sort of the front line that you deal with that are really changing or adapting their risk management approaches in that space across those 11 sectors?
Oh, 100%. Look, Genetec has been having cybersecurity at top of mind for a long time. So anything that's, software or hardware, cybersecurity is baked in. It's very, very important. It's not like in the past, it used to be somebody coming to your premises and physically damaging the premises or trying to get into now they're hidden in some garage somewhere, and they're doing, these attacks, remotely. So 100% the conversation has changed, even to the point where we were at a RFI stage, or we speak to procurement, we speak to all the stakeholders, and the first thing that comes up is cybersecurity. Right. How are you guys, what are you guys doing to ensure you can't get rid of cybersecurity, you can't stop it, you can minimize it, but what are your plans on that? So that's first thing they talk about these days.
So I suppose that rather than sort of minimizing cybersecurity, you want to maximize, but it's also sort of the risks and the threat aspect to it. In regards to that, how's sort of Genetec adapting to that approach? Your language and the conversations are changing. What about the platform itself that you have and the integrations that you have? What type of focus have you had on that for 2021?
Oh, look, we're a service or a software provider that can, bring the ecosystem in a physical security world, but we're only as good as our weakest link. So it's very, very important that our technology partners are in the same mindset as us. they're the ones that also adhere to these cybersecurity regulations and ensure that their product is also cyber hardened. So it's very important. And look, I can tell you now, probably on a weekly basis now, end users are asking us for our penetration testing reports on both software and hardware. Yeah, we have to, obviously, with an NDA, we have to give them that information to give them that peace of mind that Genetec is definitely doing something about cybersecurity and keeping that in the top of mind.
Well, it's definitely good to hear. One, that they're testing it, and two, that you're able to deliver those types of reports. What about the renewed sort of focus? Where are they coming from? Are you dealing with their service providers or the organisations themselves? Sort of who's driving this within the organisation, I suppose, is where I'm getting to. And then, yeah, who do you find that you're dealing with, and the degree of uplift that you're finding is required? Are you expanding things like your integrations for clients as well? Are they expanding that control centre approach?
Look, they're definitely the end users are a lot more educated about the topic now. They're really pushing, and with the new legislation, the ACCC inquiry into digital platforms, and the review of the Privacy Act, it's become, and Gartner, as a global research company, predicts that in 2025, 75% of CEOs will be personally liable for both cyber and physical security attacks. So when the CEO is on the chopping board, they're going to ensure that their systems in place are going to minimise the risk of being hacked. So this is definitely top of mind. Critical infrastructure is definitely number one, and the biggest concern for them is the continuity of service. Nothing more, nothing less. We can talk about different attacks and different things, but if they're not able to trade or provide a service, then that's a big disaster. And this is where CEOs are going to take personal responsibility on ensuring that technology like Genetec and others are all coming to that same journey to make sure that their premises or their facility is secured.
This might be a hard one to ask. The main driver here, we're talking about the new legislation, and that has obviously been a trigger for discussion, and you mentioned a few of the inquiries there also. But we've also got an interesting landscape with year 2 of a global pandemic and the impacts, and we're now sort of rolling out vaccines, and that's changed the discussion as well. Last year it was about response, crowd counting and people counting and social distancing. This year it's about is the workforce vaccinated, visitors vaccinated, and the like. So it has been a massive change there. And then we've also had a change in the geopolitical landscape. The foreign state actors and the nation state threats are also risen. So it's almost the perfect storm. Which one do you find is the main trigger there? Has it been, do you think, the regulation, or is it the threat landscape, or a little bit of both?
Look, it's a combination of many. Obviously, there's the cyber crimes during the pandemic has risen dramatically, and cyber attacks of foreign states and criminals is on the rise. ANZ. It's not only just in Australia and New Zealand; it's all over the world. And I can give you an example, and this is only what they've been reported. We have a cyber attack in Australia 1 every 8 minutes.
Yep.
Okay, and that's one's reported. And this last financial year alone, there was like over 67,000 cyber crimes reported, with a self-reporting loss of totaling 33 billion. But just to give you what's it called, how critical this is, 33 billion is a low number considering what's really happening out there, because a lot of companies and critical, especially, and a quarter of those is from critical infrastructure. So it's pretty disturbing to hear that. But a lot of them don't even report it because they're embarrassed of what's happened. They've paid their ransom for the ransomware, and they try to keep it under wraps so they don't want to, cause any mistrust with the community and everything else. But part of that, the regulations that the government is bringing forward is it's forcing companies, including critical infrastructure, to report these things. In the past, some fall through the crack. 33 billion could be 50 billion for we don't know, but it's very important that that companies report it And the reason why it's important is because sharing that information will enhance and enable other companies and other critical infrastructure to be able to combat what's coming at them. Like I can tell you now, the Australian Cybersecurity Centre has engaged KPMG Australia to conduct the research for these particular things, to see what hardware, software they're using, what attacks they've had and how they combat it, and make sure they share that information with other sectors and infrastructure sectors to ensure that these findings can keep Australia, you know, secure, stable, and its prosperity.
Yeah.
And this is happening as we speak. The actual survey closes on the 23rd of October.
Yeah, and you mentioned the 8 minutes there. That's out of the latest annual report from the Australian Cybersecurity Centre on their cyber threat report. So it shifted from 10 minutes to 8 minutes. So you know, that's a 20% rise in time factor in terms of the reports being received as an indicator there. What are sort of the few things that Australian and New Zealand critical infrastructure organisations can start to look to do before even the end of this year, but also moving into 2022? What are those sort of the key takeaways that you would have that organisations should be doing, particularly on the one thing I liked with Genetec and the like with these platforms is you're both physical and cyber. You're dealing with sort of information systems and surveillance systems and that security command and control. What are those key takeaways for organisations across those 11 sectors of critical infrastructure?
And like I was saying to you before, like cyber security and physical security is definitely, these worlds have converged now. They're one thing. You can't have one without the other. So it's really important to have that mindset and ensure. And cyber security is a moving target. What saved you today won't save you tomorrow. So you constantly have to be rejigging, redoing, and making sure that the new threats are minimized as much as possible. And the other big thing as well, cybersecurity breaches have physical impacts. It's very important. Most things like, there's someone sitting in some place, you know, remote, and you know, there's no physical aspect to it. Yes, there is physical aspects. You know, we've had some you know, world events that, you know, from cybersecurity breaches. Like I'll give you an example: the Colonial Pipeline security breach in America, where they hacked into, or the ransomware attack, but they hacked into their computerized equipment for their pipeline for the fuel. Just that alone, you know, about 12 states in the US, their fuel prices went through the roof because of it, because there was no continuity of service. They couldn't bring the fuel to these states. Fuel went through the roof. And this was a small thing that impacted this event. The other one is the Florida waters, the poisonous waters. They hacked into the plant system and they increased the levels of sodium hydroxide in the water. Luckily, they had a system in place to detect it, and it saved a lot of lives. If they didn't have these regulations and these machines to automate real-time these systems, there would have been a real disaster. And again, all this is all because of the increased interconnectivity, which introduces more vulnerabilities. Everyone loves the robot that, you know, vacuums your house and mops your house and does all this, feeds your cat, feeds your dog. But all these things are internet things that could be hacked, that could be, you know, manipulated. And that's why it's important that the more and more we are digitized, the more and more things that can come to play.
And I think that's why we're hearing more and more, and it's always good to hear and see from companies like Genetec that are sort of traditionally been in that sort of surveillance sector, now moving into that sort of system management sector. And again, then you start to have all of these endpoints. Any key integrations that you've seen this year and you sort of forecast for 2022 that you think organisations will be needing or looking for that you might not have seen previously?
Well, I think if I have to give 3 takeaways or 3 critical things that they should look at with any organisation, critical infrastructure or not, is the first thing is a solid cybersecurity protection plan. Yep. Very important. The second one is physical security system partners that put cybersecurity at the forefront, top of mind. Very important. And the last thing is an up-to-date physical security system that is resistant, scalable, and reliable.
And with those integrations in the partner network, maybe an overview of where Genetec's at as we come to the sort of close of 2021. is your partner network. I think last time we spoke, you were certainly talking more about New Zealand as well, coming in on train. Where's your partner ecosystem and your footprint here in the ANZ market now?
Yeah, look, our partner program is growing, definitely. So we've got over 100 partners across Australia and New Zealand, and these include multinationals there as well. So it's growing really well, and we're choosing the right partners as well to be able to use Genetec, the best of capabilities. And these partners are also coming on this journey as well with the whole cybersecurity dialogue. So it's very important that our partners are also talking the same dialogue as what we're doing.
Yep. And what about from a surveillance perspective? Have you seen a rise and uptake in the surveillance sector as well, particularly across those 11 sectors? What's been the level of uplift that you've seen, do you think, in terms of your market size, your market share growing, or you've grown this year as a result of that?
Oh, look, critical infrastructure is growing, and the government is spending a lot of money to ensure that these are protected, they're well protected. Obviously, what we bring to the table, we can't. We've got the software package that bring to the table, but we're actually partnering with our technology partners who are cyber focused as well, and we're coming to the table to the end user to ensure that the systems that we're implementing today are protecting the infrastructure today and into the future. And it's a moving target, like I mentioned before. Yeah. You can't have a silver bullet that fixes all your problems. You need to ensure you can revisit it. So we've got a feature in our software called the security score, which is exactly that. It gives you a score of how secure your system is, your security center system is. For example, if you add a camera to the system and it has a firmware that has vulnerabilities, it will flag it straight away. And we'll also give you the new firmware that fixes those vulnerabilities in the system. So it gives you that it's constantly checking and making sure things like passwords are being changed. The password is not, password, or if it's, so it's important that, it keeps on checking, and you can do it every minute, every hour, every day. It's entirely up to you. And it doesn't cost you anything. It's baked in through our software. So these are the things. Doesn't matter if you add an intercom, an LPR, a license plate recognition camera, a door, or a camera. It's constantly scanning and making sure that there's no vulnerabilities on these devices.
I think that's why I always find it most exciting, particularly security technology, because of that integration with all of that. And as we've seen with Genetec over the years, you've now grown to a security management platform rather than a surveillance management platform. And I think that's the key aspect here for organisations managing their security and safety. They need to be looking at these platforms and the integration and that visibility that they provide for that monitoring. Well, look, it's been a fascinating area, and it's been something we've been monitoring throughout the year. We'll keep with you, obviously, George and Genetec, as we move towards the end of 2021, and goodness knows what 2022 holds. But we're in the right industry, I think, particularly keeping people protected, and as we've seen and discussing this session on critical infrastructure. So that's Let's Get Critical. I like that. The new security imperative for Australian critical infrastructure. And we've been joined by George Moawad, the ANZ Country Manager with Genetec. Thanks again, George, and best of success for the rest of the year.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you for having us.
Good on you.
Cheers.